Well, hello, everyone. This is Elvis, and I would like to greet everyone and just let everyone know that this is a introductory video um, on how to solo RPG using Dungeons and Dragons 5e rules. I'm not going to go into super details, but I just want to give broad strokes on the capabilities and the abilities and the accessibilities on you can um RPG solo using 5e rules with some tweaks and things that I've come across. Now, I'm sure most of us or most of the people who are tuning in or listening to this are either want some information or just want to see if it's possible. And it's definitely possible. So what I like to do is just go over again, just a really brief discussion on this. And then in future videos, I'm going to delve in more into section by section and with further examples and so forth, and based off feedback and stuff like that. So as you can see, I just wrote a bunch of stuff down. Like obviously, why solo RPG? And why D&D? And I think most of us, at least for me, it's nostalgic. I grew up playing Dungeons and Dragons when I was younger. Then life gets in the way, career and family and et cetera, et cetera. And now when having a little bit more time, I figure, you know what? Why not? Let's rehash the experience. But like many of us, it's hard to find players, or maybe your social circles are they maybe not necessarily want to play D&D or other type of RPGs. But I've always enjoyed it, and I'm pretty comfortable stating that it's a fun game and it's a nice hobby. And so I like to continue with it. So I think like most of us, it's a fun experience. And especially nowadays where it's challenging whether people can trying to get involved, this and that, and maybe you don't want to do the online thing. I've tried the online stuff and it's okay. Just you don't know who you're getting with, and it can be chaotic. So I've looked at videos, I researched, just like anybody else on YouTube, and I've come across, what? Let's take a dive into this. Now, I figure you needed a starting point. But before I go into what I bought and stuff like that, just kind of want to talk about why solo RPG. And again, just like what I just talked about, there's a lot to it, and I think this is more for my case. In your case, it could be completely different. And there's a couple things that, I've been wanting to do kind of more on the side besides just doing my regular work, is developing my writing skills in this type of fantasy Dungeons and Dragons elements. I want to enhance my dungeon master skills. I want my player skills. If I do get into a separate game, I want to be able to kind of be hone in on those skills. And I think this is a perfect way to do it. Also, I just like to see how any new stuff and stay on top of it. So I've been kind of out of touch, but now I've done my research and I'm pretty comfortable with that. And there's a lot of things that I just enjoy. Just like I mentioned, it's better storytelling, writing. I want to build my solo epic campaign. Trigger some of the theater of the mind elements. And at the end of the day, bottom line, I just want to play D&D and have fun. So, and that's where we're at. And going with that, where did I start? Now, before the starting point is exactly, I think a lot of people are maybe some of you, what's the starting point, with D&D? Well, first and foremost, you got to have a starting point. And the old days, you just bought a module or, some tools, and then it's pen and paper. And there's a lot of products out there that you can just pick up right away and without even low expenditures. you can commence. But we want to play D&D 5e, and that's the goal here. That's one of the goals. So I I thought about this in some, and based off my research. Um, Again, where do you start? Now, first and foremost, you got to pick an option. So, like I mentioned, and I'm going to just scroll down here. So, I picked for D&D. They have tons of resources out there. So, I picked a starter set as my focus. Very straightforward. There's like 3 or 4 of them. The starter set. Lost Mine is a Vandellar. Essentials kit. Dragons of Icespire Peak. Starter set of the Dragons of Stormwreck Isle. I think that's as of recently one of the newer ones for that. And I think these are good starting points for either if it's a group play or a solo play, just to kind of hone in on the skills with these starter packs. And they do a lot of the heavy lifting for you, because you're like, all right, do I if I start solo RPG, what's the start? Do I need to build this whole world? No, the worlds are already out there. Why go through that whole process if you want to start rolling some dice, in minutes? So I think picking up one of these starter sets is a perfect way, and again, you might have different opinions on that, but this is what I did, and it's been working out great. And just to kind of give everybody a little tidbit, it's been maybe about 2 weeks since I've started, and I'm having a blast. I've gone through some days and nights. I'm just thinking about it a lot. It's been fun. I'm thinking like, okay, what can I do next? And when you play solo, you have to put on different hats: the GM hat, the player's hat, a monster's hat, the NPC's hat. So there's a lot of little things like that. And my recent chapter was quite extensive, and like I said, I'll go into more details, but it was a lot more of the role playing versus the just full on combat, throwing dice and stuff. But the role playing element, which has been it's been so much fun, has triggered so many things, where now I'm tying in backstories and flaws of this person, and now it's triggering this, and it's becoming another layer besides just what the module, the publication is giving me, and it's been a lot of fun, and I hope to share that with you. So that's first things first. Pick something that you can get going, and don't stress it. A lot of this, you want to be quick and get going, because that's like I said, people want to start throwing dice, and that's what I did. I've so I do a who, what, where, what, and how, and why, and all that good stuff, because it gives you something just kind of more of a top layer versus just picking up the starter kit and, all right, like, what do? You got to have tie into this, and there's some flexibilities, and there's some things you may have to modify. At least I had to get it going. But again, the starter kits kind of remove a lot of the heavy lifting and so forth. And then you just set some more some rules that you stick to, and that's up to you. And again, at the end of the day, it's whatever you want. For solo RPG, like most people probably know, if not, you got to implement an Oracle system, and I'll talk about that a little bit. This Oracle system is very key to the progression, questions, RPG, a lot of the elements that you normally be from a player perspective, but then you got to put the DM hat. You take that and you give it to this Oracle that does a lot of the gives you a lot of the yes or no, but, or, and, etc. And then you trigger out of your mind or whatever that's happening. Oh, this is this and that. So, for example, you might walk into a room, and your rogue goes to the door, and you ask the oracle, is the door locked? And I want to check for traps. And then you roll, and it says yes, no, maybe so, and potentially if there is a trap. And so it's very, very fun. So like I said, I'll go through a future video in more detail to kind of give you how I run it. Um, Also, one thing is very important is journal your progress. At least I do it, and it keeps me in line. And I'll show you what I've did initially. I was basically writing everything down by hand, and then eventually I developed another process going. Most of it, just online. Just getting a lot of writer's cramp. Um, Trying to keep everything up or memories. And I think it's a good that way you remember it. And especially it really depends. Like, if you're just trying to do small little one shots, and it doesn't really matter. Or um if your goal's like mine, where I'm developing this, kind of more of an epic campaign for myself, where I want to take it up to a certain amount of levels, then I want to journal it. So that way I have things and I can reference it, and it just gives me a much more way I can, progress the subject matter and so forth. And it's a good way to keep everything tidy. So like, for example, like you know, I wrote a lot of this stuff as far as like I did like a chapter one, and then if there was like a major, if this is, I just have this for myself. This is like an oracle throw, and it's just something very simple, or an oracle, question. The party arrived and late in the day without any issues. So, that I just checked if there was any wandering monsters or we're going to be surprised, and it came up as a no. And that's just kind of how I ran that particular first part of the adventure. Okay, now what? So again, once you've picked your starter set, let's get into the meat and potatoes of what solo RPG is about. You want to start rolling dice and slaying and collecting treasure and so forth. Um and you're gonna question this again, but no, this is important. This is, I think, and it you don't have to write like a storybook. You can just write a couple sentences on kind of more of set the theme. Give yourself what is the big picture, from a big picture perspective, and then the individual perspective. Um, and I think that's very important to help you, because when you do ask questions to the oracle, and or you question yourself or something, you need to have what's the purpose, and also just kind of gives a flavor of how are these two, three, four, five adventurers, how do they meet, and why are they all going together? So like in my case, I just, it was very quick. I wrote a couple things down, and then it triggered several items. And I did some rolling. I rolled some for some backstory information, and I used one of the several stuff online that I can find, and it helped a lot. And again, I'll go into more of a detailed discussion on that, and so forth. So um as usual, like if you've played D&D, there's always that session zero, where you commence creating your characters, and this is when you start rolling, and you create your characters. You got your character sheet, et cetera, et cetera. You got your backstory, motivation, why are we there, blah blah blah, so forth. And that's kind of where you just go down and you pick your character, and so forth. You can use pen and paper. I use a program called D&D Beyond. Probably familiar with it. It's a fantastic product. And I'll go into details on why and how I use it and how I implemented it with how I solo. It keeps all the information. I when I first started, I had all these papers, and it was just chaotic. So I've minimized the papers. I do have a journal where I do write small little notes as I keep it in my mind. I have some dice. I'll even show you my little workstation, what I have, but majority of it is a couple computers and excuse me, one computer and a couple monitors, and I'm good to go, and I can pretty much manage everything from mapping, character sheets, monsters, dice, rolling, etc. Um, but going back to this D&D Beyond, it's free. You get to create up to like 5 or 6 characters for free. And in my campaign, I have 4, and this is one of them. This is my rogue, and with all his details, and it's been so far so good. And you see, we're already up to level 3, so we're moving along. So I think character sheets, it's up to you. If you're traditional, you want to just use pen and paper and go from there. But I like the digital the product. Now you need to pick the Oracle emulator. So there's so many out there. One of the 2 most popular, at least from my I'm aware of, and people can chime in and say others. There's a couple. There's the Mythic GM emulator, which is very popular, very robust, tons of information. Almost, I think it's a very good product, but it's a little bit more at the advanced level, I think, for what I'm trying to do. And I've also it's quite extensive, but check it out. It's up to you. You might like it. I chose Scarlet Heroes. They have a whole campaign section on solo campaigning, tons of ideas, tons of charts, tons of generators, and I really like their Oracle system. It's very straightforward, nothing heavy lifting, and it gets the job done, because you don't want to be sitting there and try to wire all these percentages and chaos factors and stuff like that. Just it's a game that I'm just trying to keep things simple, and not introduce something so heavy. And this is just I have the PDF version of the product, and this is just the general Oracle. It's just basically yes or no, and then you just ask. So say for that example where my rogue was in the room, he wants to check the doors and see if it's locked, and for traps, we don't know. So you roll a d20, and you get a no, but, yes, and then there's the factors that apply. It can add a complication, which can kind of be kind of cool, because I've had situations where I did recognize the door was locked. I did recognize a trap, but still it triggered, and still happened. So it's kind of cool. So I like Scarlet Heroes. So that Oracle system is very straightforward, and it's like I just keep it in a little corner there, and when I roll. And it's great for everything from traps, secret doors, situational combat, surprise, morale, whatever the situation is. A lot more on the role playing side. It's very good. Do be aware of random encounter tables generators. This is important, because you eventually you're going to develop NPCs. You want to check what the environment is, and then the Oracle, you roll and say, okay, it's raining or it's not raining. Then you want to add those factors as you move along, and then maybe on a hex crawl from one town to another, or one area. Things do happen. It could be either environmental, or just passing NPCs or monsters, and then you can tie in little stories and tidbits and stuff like that. So which is kind of cool. So yeah, Oracle, great. And again, so I manage it through, as I mentioned, D&D Beyond, and then there's the Initiative Combat. Yeah, this one is going to be a little bit more in depth, but I use a very hybrid Initiative combat system, because the traditional one's okay, and I've used it, and I remember, and it's just always okay. You roll. Okay, this person goes first based off of this, and this, and it's just like a batting order, and then you just kind of go around. I started doing that when I first started with this campaign, because that's what I do. And I remember there was one battle scene, and it was 4-on-4, and it was pretty an even match. And it literally, and again, I'm solo. I'm not waiting for people. I'm not, okay, this person. I'm doing it solo, and I'm still doing all the, calculation. Okay, roll, roll this and this and this and that. It took a while. It took almost like 40 minutes to get through it. I mean, it was still fun. It was still all that, but I remember sitting back. I'll go, wow, that was exhausting. So I've looked at some new kind of homebrew house rules methods to help streamline it, and it's a combination, a little bit of traditional and new methods of that. So I'm playtesting it, and I'd rather set up another video and talk about that in a lot more detail and how I use it and how I've implemented it. And then so far, I've only used it in 2 scenes, and it's a lot more fun, a lot more. Um, it's chaotic, which is great, and it's great. I'm loving it. So I just got to play with it a little bit more to be good. Then you get to the role playing. This is probably one of the more challenging ones because of the solo element. How do you start asking questions to characters and this and that? And this is where Oracle, theater of the mind, helps. Trigger plot twists. Use the tables, generate something, ask a question, you know, there's just, or make it up and start from there and start rolling. And you can be surprised what you can come up with. And I'm also looking at some other um elements to do that, and so forth. I think mapping is important. Because I use mapping just like anything else. And again, I started with pen and paper, just scribbling, just to get going, and before I settled in on what I really like to be more efficient, more streamlined, I used just a pen and paper, and I was scribbling, and I was using pennies to represent the monsters, and I was using dimes to represent the players, and it was fine. It worked. It totally fine, but just a little bit. Now that I've settled in and I've thought about it, I wanted something a little bit more visual that's appealing. It adds that element of, okay, the representation of the dwarf is this instead of just a dime, and so forth. And as you can tell here, I have the mapping, and I'm using product called Owlbear Rodeo, and quick and easy. There's tons of other products out there. I like this one, and I'll go into more details a little bit later. As you can see, I have a dice system here where I can just roll on the fly, and every color represents something. These are the player characters, and the two red ones would be the orcs. And there you go. Nice and easy. So I like that product a lot. This is, I don't want to go into too much detail here. The Art of Solo Delusion. It's a FlexTail system, so it's a FlexTail product or they've vetted a lot of it. It's because remember, you got to put on the GM hat, the player's hat, monster, and PC, and but when you put on the GM hat, of course, you got to read some of the details of the layout and, okay, who's what monsters and so forth. So you're going to know where everything's at, where the secret rooms are at, or at least in general. You're going to know how many. So this is where this system works out pretty good. This whole process, this methodology, is philosophy of what they call intentional strays, and it's basically rolling. You're rolling with the oracle. Like, just for example, like I knew in room XYZ there's a secret door, and based off my rolls and the numbers I tried, I failed. I failed miserably, and I didn't open that secret door. Unfortunately, I didn't find it, and I knew there was some stuff in the other room, and we left, and that was it. So that kind of puts that element of somewhat realism that even though I knew, but based off the rolls and this, intentional stray methodology, I hey, I lost out. And I've also had other cases where it kind of helped in different ways and go from there. And again, I'll go into more detail because that's quite a little bit more extensive discussion there. And then dice. I use both. I use a combination of the real dice, and like I mentioned, I have an owlbear. This one works out pretty cool, and you can color code them and so forth. I was going to buy 100 bags of dice, and I realized, I didn't have to. There's no need to. And I already talked about the journal. It's great. I'll show you some details on that, and then there's guidelines. These are my guidelines. Everything from a chaos factor, introduce conflict, in media res, start in the middle of the action, get things moving. Conflict is good. Trust the oracle, your roles, keep things simple. Don't worry about it. Don't get frustrated. Make something up. Who cares? Again, it's just you. Adjust, modify, fit your style. No need to buy tons of books, guides, tons of free stuff out there. It's all for the birds, you know. It's I'm at a point where I literally only spent maybe $18, 18.50 or something like that. I got the essential kit, on sale, and I've bought some, you know, I bought some pads and which I'm not even using. I bought a dry erasers and stuff like that. And, I mean, dry markers and stuff like that. And it just, not much. And then I bought a PDF copy of Scarlet Heroes, which was like $5 or something like that. I can't even remember. So yeah, it's again, it's don't go too crazy on that, and and add some gravy, ambiance. I add some, and I'll show you how I do it. I had some music backgrounds. So say if I'm going to be role playing all day in a tavern based off of this, I might have just something in the back of the mind while I'm not just thinking. Yeah, I can have regular music, but why not set the setting while you're in the mood where you're rolling. So you might have a background. You're listening to just a tavern, and there's tons of things that you can find online free, and that's kind of where it's at. And like I said, this is just introductory. I like to go through this in a little bit more details, step by step. Most importantly, have fun. At the end of the day, it's all made up, and it's in your mind. And I think that's kind of where it's the fun part comes in, and that's kind of where it's at right now. So, I mean, it's again broad strokes, very very kind of top level introductory. I do want to get into details, and I want to share my campaign and share every chapter and so forth, and see what I've done and show you. And then eventually, once we catch up, I want to go to a live or maybe a full on, dynamic element of what I'm doing, and you can kind of see it. I might have to edit it because it can be a while, but it's all good. Well, I mean, that's it for now. I appreciate it. I've started this channel scratch, so appreciate any subscription, likes, add comments. I like to build a community and partake and get more involved, and I'll be jumping in some Reddits and and other people like-minded, because I know we're out there. The solo RPGs are out there, so we need tons of support and so forth. So yeah, that's it. Well, that's it for now. Talk to you later. Bye.